What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Roddy Rod, and today we're going to talk about dimensions. Why? Because a guy that I follow on TikTok, whose username is Alive and Kicking, he made me realize that Congress has discovered a new word, and they're using it, but we're not even sure that they really understand the context of what they're saying. And that word is interdimensional when talking about the UAP program. So, check this out.
People will call them alien, but they're not.
I don't look at this and think ET. I look at these as displacement craft that are coming from parallel realities.
Interdimensional.
That can literally move interdimensionally.
And he said interdimensional.
Quasi-projected from higher dimensional space.
This could be something that is extra or hyperdimensional.
We're telling the entire world that there is something other than human
Now
life
that
form.
sounds good and all, but what does that really mean when we're talking about interdimensional? Well, to understand that, we must first understand the levels of dimensions. So, let's talk about zero dimension. It's a single point. That's how we describe it. Now, obviously, if you have zero dimensions, there's nothing around you. But then, to get to the first dimension, I drew on this piece of paper here a line, okay? Let's pretend that you live in that one-dimensional world. All you know is everything that's ever occurred on this single line, okay? Now, how do you interact with the second dimension? Well, it comes to a point where those lines begin to intersect, okay? So we have here, we now have here, here, and here. This now gives us a 2D plane, a flat plane, okay? This is 2D. So if you are a being living in that one-dimensional world and you intersect it with this 2D plane, first off, all you can really see is the things that you know from your dimensions. And once you see this other thing interact with you, you're going to be like, yo, what is that? You can't fully understand it. Why? Because you're a one-dimensional being. So let's talk about us. We are 3D beings and how this fourth dimension or some other higher dimension is interacting with us right now. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that we are aware of some intelligent life form living in the two-dimensional world, and we can see them. And they don't really know that we're there. They have an idea that something might be above them, but they're not quite sure because why? Their whole world has been lived in this flat plane. Okay? Now, we are the higher beings, so we look down and we want to communicate with these things because we realize, like, hey, they have a whole civilization going on there. So we do what we can. Hey, guys, can you hear me? Now, to us, we know that we're shouting at them, but they're probably thinking, like, yo, did you just hear the voice come out the sky? So, I have a suspicion that some of those sounds that we've been hearing in the sky, kind of like this here,
Guys, what is going on?
Strange sounds are being heard around the world. In Sweden, this sure sounds like a trumpet. In Michigan, another
I'm not
trumpet
saying
like
that those sounds were interdimensional beings or aliens, but let's just say for the sake of argument that they were. And that was their first way of trying to establish communications with us. Well, now, how do you get people's attention now if you can't have that? So let's go back to our 2D world and using us as the higher dimension to explain it. Now, we couldn't get the sound to work because we're in two different dimensions, so we didn't understand one another. Now, let's try to interact. Let's try to communicate. Let's go down somehow. So we're going to use this wall here behind me as an example. This wall is now our 2D world instead of the piece of paper that I heard earlier. Now I need you to see me because clearly you couldn't hear me. So if I take this light and I put my hand right here, guess what? There's a shadow, right? Now, you and I, we know that that was just my shadow being cast on that 2D world. However, if you lived in that 2D world and that's all you understood, then guess what? You're going to be like, yo, I'm tripping. I either saw a ghost or some sort of demonic force that just came about. Why? Because something was there. I could see through it, but I couldn't touch it. But I saw it. It was there. You would be tripping if you lived in that world. Let's take it a step further. Let's go back to the paper as my world. Okay, you're living in this 2D world. Now that you've seen my projection, I'm now going to stick my hand in your world, because I want you to know I'm here. I'm here. If you lived in that world, man, we would be tripping. We would trip. Why? Because you cannot explain what in the world you just saw. So when you see the David Grushes and the Bob Lazars and Dr. Stephen Greers of the world explaining to us that we have craft in our possession that are 30 feet wide, 40 feet long, but when you go inside of them, they're the size of a football field. And for context, if you put that in feet, the football field would be about 160 feet wide, 360 feet long. We know what they are in yards, but that's what we're talking about here. It doesn't make sense to us because in our 3D reality, that is physically impossible. That makes zero sense. Unless, of course, if you came from a higher dimension. Let's go back to my example here. In my 2D world, if I put my hand here, if you are a 2D creature, you can only see the part of my hand that is touching the paper, okay? You can only see that. However, if it were possible to actually open up my hand and go inside of it, guess what? Those now 2D beings would go inside and be like, guys, you're not going to believe this. That line that we saw, or those things that came out of the sky on us, we went inside, and inside it was even bigger than it was on the rest of the world we have here. That happens because I came from a higher dimension, and the things that's below me cannot see me, okay? When we see these crafts coming out of the sky and they look physically impossible, like for instance, being able to just take off just like that, it's because they're coming from a higher dimension. It would be the equivalent of us playing with toys on that 2D world, that piece of paper, and then I'm telling my child to clean up, and they pick it up, and then boom, it's just gone. To a 2D being, that wouldn't make sense, but to us, we would know, okay, I just told them to get up and go. It's because we came from somewhere different. It looked impossible to them, but if I came from somewhere higher, it made plenty of sense. So I hope that this all made sense to you. I tried to explain it as best I can. Like I said, I can't explain it in great detail like the gentleman that I referenced earlier can, but I hope that this makes sense to you. And because I am concerned when I hear Congress talk about interdimensional, yet they can't seem to articulate to us exactly what that means. There's a couple things that's at play here. Either they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about and they're just regurgitating what they heard the people that testified before them say, or they just don't care to explain it to us. Why? Because it's too complicated and they think it'll just go right over our head because we're not as good as they are, which that's probably more likely too. But anyways, either way, that's pretty messed up. So you have people like me and all the other folks out here trying our best to explain it in a way that we understand. And I hope that this has helped shed some light on you why some of it makes absolutely no sense and why it seems so impossible to us. But when you're talking about interdimensional, keep in mind, they're talking about beings that are higher than we are. So, hey, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm going to keep digging at this. I'm out, y'all. Peace.